The dumpster behind Romano's Italian kitchen had become my routine stop. Not out of pride, but survival. Every morning at 9:30 sharp, they tossed their unsold bread, still warm, still soft. For a man who'd once been a respected veterinarian, timing his breakfast around a garbage schedule was a special kind of humiliation. But after the divorce, after losing the clinic, the house, and the only woman I thought I'd grow old with, that alley had become my life. I was 43 years old, Michael Thompson, DVM, at least I had been. 3 months ago, I had a steady income, a roof, and a family. Now, my home was a beat-up Honda Civic parked 2 streets over, and my best friend was a Vietnam vet named Jeremiah, who taught me where to find food and which alleys were safe to sleep in. That morning, frost clung to my sleeping bag, and my breath came out in shaky clouds. I was digging through the dumpster for something edible, maybe a half-eaten lasagna if I got lucky, when I heard footsteps. Not the dragging sound of another homeless man, not the heavy boots of a security guard. These were crisp, expensive shoes. "Michael Thompson?" a calm voice said. I froze, gripping the cold metal rim of the dumpster. Nobody called me by my full name anymore. Slowly, I turned around. The man before me looked like he'd stepped out of a courtroom drama, tall, sharp suit, silver tie, and hair that didn't dare move in the wind. He held a leather briefcase worth more than my car. "Who's asking?" I managed, my voice hoarse from disuse. "Harold Blackstone," he said, extending a gloved hand. "I'm an estate attorney from New York. I've been looking for you." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Yeah, sure you have." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a photograph. It was me, 5 years ago, standing in front of my clinic, smiling in my white coat. My heart twisted. That was the man I used to be, before everything fell apart. "Your great-uncle, Rudolph Hartley, passed away last month," Blackstone continued. "You've been named in his will. That name, Rudolph, hit me like a ghost from childhood. The man who sent me $5 in a birthday card every year until I turned 18, then vanished. I hadn't heard from him in 25 years. I shook my head. There's a mistake. Uncle Rudolph had money, real money. He wouldn't leave anything to me." Blackstone's expression didn't change. "He left everything to you, Mr. Thompson. His penthouse on the Upper East Side, his yacht in the Hamptons, his art and investment portfolio. The estate totals approximately $47 million. My breath caught. 47 million? The number didn't feel real. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for the scam to reveal itself. But he only reached into his case again and handed me official-looking papers, a will, a law firm seal, even a death certificate. If this is some kind of joke. "It isn't," he said softly. "But there's one condition." And there it was, the catch. There always is. You must come to New York to view a private video message left by Mr. Hartley. Only then will you know the terms. I felt dizzy. And if I don't? He closed the briefcase. Then, in 72 hours, the estate transfers to the alternate beneficiary, your ex-wife, Veronica Thompson. The world tilted. My stomach dropped. I could still hear Veronica's last words before she drove away in her new boyfriend's BMW. "No one will ever love a broke man like you." Blackstone adjusted his watch, a Rolex that gleamed even in the gray light. "Mr. Thompson, I have a car waiting. We can be in New York by noon." I looked down at my stained jeans and duct-taped shoes. The thought of stepping into a world of luxury again felt absurd, but maybe, just maybe, this was my second chance. "Give me 5 minutes," I said finally. "I need to say goodbye to someone." As I walked toward Jeremiah's corner to tell him I was leaving, a strange feeling crept up my spine, like fate had been watching me from the shadows all along. Uncle Rudolph had left me a fortune, but I had a feeling he'd also left me something far more dangerous. The car that waited for me didn't belong anywhere near the alleyways I'd been calling home. A black Mercedes S-Class, spotless even under the grime-gray morning sky. Harold Blackstone opened the door for me like I was someone important, someone I barely remembered being. I hesitated before sliding into the leather seat. My hands were trembling, and I couldn't tell if it was from cold or disbelief. For the first time in months, I felt warmth seep through my bones. The heater hummed quietly, and the faint scent of new car leather filled the air. My reflection in the tinted window looked like a stranger, unshaven, hollow-eyed, and far older than 43. I caught Blackstone studying me in the rearview mirror but said nothing. "Where are we going first?" I asked, my voice breaking the silence. "To LaGuardia," he replied. "A private jet is waiting to take us to Manhattan. Mr. Hartley made arrangements long before his passing. He was thorough." The word thorough sat heavy in the air. I didn't know what to feel. Gratitude? Fear? Suspicion? Probably all three. As the city passed by, I thought about Veronica, my ex-wife, and how her laughter had followed me out of the courthouse. "You'll never be anything without me," she'd said, standing next to her new boyfriend Clayton, who owned half the car dealerships in Cedar Falls. She got the house, the furniture, even our dog Max. I walked away with my old Civic and a pile of debt, and now suddenly, I was worth $47 million. It didn't feel real. The plane ride was silent. I sat across from Blackstone, who worked methodically on his laptop. Every so often, he looked at me as though trying to measure my reaction to this bizarre new reality. The hum of the engines felt hypnotic. I stared out at the endless white clouds and wondered what Uncle Rudolph had been thinking all these years. I barely remembered him, a tall, quiet man who visited us twice when I was a kid. My dad used to tense up whenever he came by. There was some family tension I never understood. One Christmas, I'd overheard them arguing in the kitchen, my dad yelling, "You gave up your right to this family years ago." Then the door slammed and Uncle Rudolph was gone. That was the last time I saw him. Now, 25 years later, his name had reappeared in my life like a ghost with unfinished business. When we landed, a chauffeur was already waiting. The Manhattan skyline glimmered like a steel forest under the late afternoon sun. I pressed my forehead to the window, watching the towers rise higher and higher. I'd spent months sleeping under concrete bridges. Now I was surrounded by glass ones. The car pulled up to a tall building on 73rd and Lexington. I recognized it immediately from the papers. The Hartley Tower, named after my uncle. His penthouse occupied the entire top floor. "Everything you see," Blackstone said, stepping out, "is yours, pending one condition." The doorman, dressed in immaculate navy, opened the lobby door without hesitation. The marble floors gleamed, reflecting chandeliers the size of my old living room. I felt out of place, like an imposter walking through someone else's dream. Up in the elevator, the air grew still. My ears popped slightly as we climbed past the 30th, then 40th floor. At the 52nd, the doors opened into a world I couldn't have imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows, velvet drapes, a grand piano, and a cityscape stretching endlessly beneath us. "This place," I whispered. "He actually lived here?" Blackstone nodded. "He built it himself in 1993. He never married. Had no children. You are his only blood relative still alive." "Then why now?" I asked quietly. "Why leave it to me?" He turned to me, his expression unreadable. "That, Mr. Thompson, is exactly what you're here to find out." He led me toward a long oak table, where a sleek laptop sat open. A single envelope rested beside it, sealed in red wax. "This contains the key to the message," Blackstone said, sliding it toward me. "Your uncle recorded a video before his passing. You're to watch it alone." My hands shook as I reached for the envelope. Inside was a small USB drive, old-fashioned, almost sentimental. "Once you've watched it," Blackstone said, heading for the door, "you'll understand the condition. Take your time." When the door clicked shut behind him, silence filled the penthouse. I stood there, surrounded by wealth, staring at the small piece of plastic that apparently held my future. I walked to the laptop, plugged in the drive, and took a deep breath as the screen flickered to life. Then I heard a familiar voice, deep, calm, and unmistakably real. "Hello, Michael," Uncle Rudolph said. "If you're watching this, it means my plan has worked." The moment my uncle's face appeared on the laptop screen, my heart stopped. His voice, low, steady, and strangely familiar, echoed through the silent penthouse. "Hello, Michael," he said, his gray-blue eyes locking onto the camera. "If you're watching this, I'm gone. And if Harold Blackstone has done his job, you're sitting in my home right now, wondering why a man you barely remember left you $47 million. I couldn't breathe." He leaned forward slightly, his tone shifting from calm to deliberate. "You were always meant to find me, Michael. You just didn't know it yet. Your father and I—" He paused, exhaling heavily. "We made mistakes that tore this family apart. You were too young to remember what happened between us, but that rift cost both of us everything. My father and him? They hadn't spoken in decades. All I knew was that my father hated him, but he never told me why." Rudolph continued. "When your parents divorced, your father took you away from this city and vowed never to speak to me again. He blamed me for what happened to your mother, but he never told you the truth, did he?" I leaned closer. My palms were sweating. "The truth," Rudolph said, his voice softening, "is that your mother didn't leave because of me. She left because of something your father did." I froze. My father, the man who raised me, who taught me to work hard, who I believed was the most honest man I knew? She discovered something. Something that could have destroyed your father's reputation. And when she threatened to expose it, he made sure she disappeared. "I helped her escape," Rudolph said, his eyes glistening. "I promised I'd protect her, but she never made it far. The car accident that killed her wasn't an accident at all." The room felt colder suddenly. My throat tightened as I stared at the paused frame of his face on the screen. Rudolph pressed on, his voice lower now. "I spent the next 30 years trying to atone for my part in it. I built this empire not for myself, but for you. For the son of the brother I couldn't forgive, but also couldn't abandon." He leaned back and folded his hands. "But inheritance without truth is a curse, which is why I've left you one task before you can claim the estate." There it was, the catch. Somewhere in this city lies a locked box containing everything your father tried to bury. The evidence, the names, the reason I stayed silent all these years. Inside you'll find the truth about your mother's death, and about who your father really was. But you have only 72 hours to find it. After that, the entire fortune transfers to Veronica Thompson, my ex-wife. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Harold will give you the first clue," Rudolph continued. "The rest, you must find yourself. I've hidden it in the places that meant something to me, places that tell our family's story. If you succeed, you'll inherit not just my wealth, but the truth. If you fail, it all goes to the woman who betrayed you. Consider it motivation." He smiled faintly, sadly, almost. "This isn't about money, Michael. It's about redemption. For me, for your mother, and maybe for you." Then the screen went black. I sat frozen, my heart thundering in my chest. My mother's death wasn't an accident? My father was involved? My uncle helped her escape? None of it made sense. A soft knock broke the silence. Harold Blackstone stepped back into the room, his face grave. "I assume you've seen the video." I nodded wordlessly. He handed me a small black envelope. "This is the first clue." I tore it open with shaking fingers. Inside was a photograph, an old one, slightly faded, of a park bench overlooking a fountain. Scrawled on the back were 5 words: "Where she waited every Sunday." My mind flashed back to childhood. Sunday mornings. My mother sitting on a park bench with a book while I fed pigeons. She used to call it our secret place. I looked up at Harold. "He's talking about Rosewood Park, isn't he?" Harold gave a single, slow nod. "Yes, and if what I suspect is true, Mr. Thompson, that park is where everything begins." He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "You have 72 hours. Don't waste them." As the door closed behind him, I stared once more at the photo in my hands. The edges trembled between my fingers. Rosewood Park, my mother, my father's secret, and the start of a hunt that could either make me a millionaire or destroy me completely. The next morning, I stood at the gates of Rosewood Park. The place looked smaller than I remembered. The fountain moss-covered, the benches worn, the air thick with the scent of wet leaves, but the memories came flooding back all at once. This was where Mom used to bring me every Sunday when I was a kid. She'd read her mystery novels while I'd chase pigeons across the path, pretending I was a superhero. I could almost hear her voice. "Always be kind, Michael, even when the world isn't kind to you." Now I was standing in the same spot, the man she'd raised, but a stranger to my own past. I followed the old stone path toward the bench in the photo, the one by the fountain. It was still there, though the paint had peeled, and one leg was uneven. On the seat lay a single fresh rose. Someone had been here, recently. My pulse quickened. I looked around. Couples walking dogs, an old man feeding ducks, a teenager skateboarding near the gate. No one suspicious? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I sat down on the bench and ran my fingers along the wooden slats. My hand brushed against something rough beneath the seat, a small strip of duct tape. I tugged it loose and pulled out a folded piece of paper and an old brass key. The paper was weathered but legible. It read, "The truth begins where love ended. Find the house that wasn't a home." I stared at the words, trying to make sense of them. The house that wasn't a home? My mind raced through possibilities. My father's old place? The apartment Veronica and I lost after the divorce? Or maybe the house from before everything fell apart? Then it hit me. The cottage where my parents lived before Mom's accident. The one we left when I was 8. I hadn't been there in decades. Before I could think further, someone sat down beside me. "Did you find what you were looking for?" a voice said. I turned to a woman in her late 30s, dark hair tied back, wearing a gray coat and sunglasses. Her tone was calm but carried an edge, like she already knew something I didn't. "Excuse me?" I said. She smiled faintly. "Your uncle said you'd come here." He was right. I froze. "Who are you?" She reached into her coat slowly and handed me a small business card. "Detective Elise Warren, private investigator." "I worked for your uncle the last 2 years before he passed," she said. "He asked me to make sure you followed the trail and to keep you safe." "Safe from what?" I asked, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Let's just say, not everyone is happy about you being the heir." Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She checked it, frowned, then looked back at me. "You should leave the park now. You're being watched." My eyes darted around. "By who?" "Someone who doesn't want you to find that house." I glanced at the brass key in my hand, small, old, with a number etched into it, 4782. My pulse was pounding. "What does this open?" She hesitated. "That you'll have to find out yourself. But if I were you, I'd start at the address on Maple Hill Road. That's where your uncle's first company was registered, and where everything began." She stood, tucked her phone away, and said one last thing before walking off. "Whatever you find, Michael, be ready for it. The truth isn't just ugly, it's dangerous." I sat frozen for a moment, the rose beside me, the brass key heavy in my hand. The house that wasn't a home, 4782, Maple Hill Road. I whispered the address to myself like a riddle I didn't yet understand. Then I pocketed the key, took one last look at the bench where my mother once smiled at me, and walked toward the park's exit. Somewhere ahead, the truth waited, buried in a house full of ghosts, lies, and the past I was never meant to uncover. The GPS led me down a winding rural road lined with tall pines and sagging fences. The deeper I drove, the less familiar everything looked, until suddenly, the trees parted and I saw it. There it was. A2 Maple Hill Road. The cottage sat at the end of a gravel driveway, hidden behind overgrown hedges. The paint had long since peeled away, revealing gray wood beneath. The windows were dark, clouded with years of dust. And yet, the moment I stepped out of the car, something inside me stirred. A faint flicker of memory. I remembered the tire swing that used to hang from the oak tree by the porch, the smell of apple pie drifting through the kitchen window, my mother laughing as my father chased me across the yard. But those memories felt borrowed now, like they belonged to someone else. The brass key from the park felt cold in my hand. When I reached the front door, I noticed the lock was rusted but intact. My fingers trembled as I slid the key in and turned it. Click. The door creaked open. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and time. Sheets covered the furniture. Cobwebs hung like lace curtains from the ceiling. The floor groaned beneath my boots. But there was something else. Something faint, metallic, beneath the smell of decay. Blood. A chill ran through me. I stepped further in, the beam of my phone flashlight cutting through the darkness. The first room was empty except for a faded photograph on the mantel. A family of 3. My father, my mother, and me. Except in this photo, I couldn't have been older than 7. And behind us stood another man. He looked like my father, but wasn't. The same height, same jawline, but the eyes were colder, sharper. On the back of the photograph in my father's handwriting were 3 words. Never trust him. Before I could process it, a loud crash came from the back of the house. I spun around, heart hammering, gripping my phone like a weapon. "Who's there?" I shouted, no answer. Just silence. I crept toward the sound, my pulse loud in my ears. The hallway was lined with family portraits, except every face had been slashed out with something sharp. At the end of the hall was a door I didn't remember. A basement door. It was padlocked, but the lock was old and weak. I kicked it once, twice, and it snapped open. The smell hit me first. Mildew, old paper, something acrid. I descended slowly, each step groaning like it might give way. The flashlight flickered, catching glimpses of boxes stacked floor to ceiling. Files, ledgers, and on the far wall, a large corkboard covered in photographs, maps, and newspaper clippings, all connected by red string. At the center of it was one name written in thick black ink, Rudolph Hartley. My uncle. I froze. Pinned beside his name were photos of me. Some from childhood, others recent. One from my wedding, another from my clinic, even one from the shelter I'd been staying at just weeks ago. My stomach turned. Someone had been watching me. For years. There were letters too, dozens of them. Some signed RH, and others unsigned. I picked one up and unfolded it carefully. Michael, if you're reading this, it means the truth has found you. I didn't mean for your life to become a game, but your father's choices left me no choice. What he took from me wasn't money. It was blood. My hands shook as I read on. He lied to protect you, to keep you away from what I built. But now it's time for you to decide what kind of man you are. The key you found is one of two. The other opens a safe that holds everything. The will, the truth, and your father's secret. The letter ended with an address. Hartley Tower, Manhattan. Penthouse 47. That was his home, the one Blackstone mentioned. As I folded the letter, I heard footsteps above me. Slow. Deliberate. Someone else was in the house. I turned off my flashlight and held my breath, listening. A voice echoed faintly from the floorboards above. A woman's voice. Michael, you shouldn't have come here. I froze where I stood. It was Detective Elise Warren, but her tone wasn't protective this time. It was cold, detached, and for the first time I realized I might have just walked straight into a trap. I stayed perfectly still, crouched in the shadows of that basement, every nerve in my body screaming. The sound of her boots echoed faintly above, measured, deliberate. Detective Elise Warren wasn't supposed to be here. She was supposed to be the one helping me. But the way she called my name, there was no warmth in it this time. Michael, she called again, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. You shouldn't have come here. You've done enough damage already. My mind raced. How did she know where I was? Who had told her? Unless she'd never stopped watching me. I took a slow, careful step backward, bumping into one of the dusty crates stacked behind me. The wood creaked loudly, and her footsteps stopped. Michael? Her tone sharpened. I didn't answer. My pulse thundered in my ears as I moved toward the back wall, scanning for another exit. There. A narrow window, half covered by cobwebs and grime. It was small, but maybe big enough to squeeze through. Then I heard the unmistakable sound of the basement door creaking open. Don't make this harder than it has to be, Elise said, her voice now echoing from the stairwell. Your father tried to protect you, but it's too late for that now. Her words struck like ice. My father, I whispered under my breath. What do you know about my father? A beam of light from her flashlight cut through the darkness, sweeping across the walls. It landed on the corkboard, the photos, the strings, the name Rudolph Hartley. And then her voice softened, almost regretful. I told him this would happen, she murmured. I froze. She stepped closer, her gun drawn. The flashlight beam trembled slightly as it illuminated my face. Our eyes met for a moment that seemed to stretch forever. Put your hands up, Michael. I hesitated, hands half raised. Why are you here, Elise? What is this place? She sighed, a deep, tired sound that made her seem less like a cop and more like someone who'd been carrying a secret too long. This house, she said quietly, belonged to your uncle long before it belonged to your father. They both built their empire from this very room. Only, your father wanted out. Rudolph didn't. What empire? I demanded. She nodded toward the crates around us. Look inside, you'll see. Cautiously, I pried open one of the crates. Inside were old binders, ledgers, and envelopes stuffed with cash, each labeled with years: 1992, 1993, 1994. I flipped one open and felt my stomach drop. They weren't business records. They were payoffs, political bribes, names of judges, officers, politicians, all paid under the table. My father's name was on several entries, and so was Detective Warren's. My throat went dry. "You were part of it," I said slowly. "All of you." She didn't deny it. "We all were. Your uncle started it. Your father tried to stop it. That's why he took you and disappeared." "But the wallet?" "That was no accident," she interrupted. "Your uncle left it for you. He wanted you to find this place, to finish what he started." The walls felt like they were closing in. "Why me?" She lowered her gun slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you're the only one left, Michael. And because he didn't trust anyone else to reveal the truth." Before I could respond, a loud bang erupted outside, the sound of a car door slamming, then heavy footsteps approaching the porch. Elisa's eyes widened. "He's here," she said, her voice trembling now. "Rudolph's men. If they find us, we're both dead." The front door splintered open upstairs. Multiple voices shouted, boots thudding on wood. "Basement! Check the basement!" Elise grabbed my arm. "There's a tunnel behind those crates. It leads out to the old orchard. Go." "What about you?" She shook her head. "I'll hold them off. You find the safe. Hartley Tower. Penthouse 47. Everything ends there." Before I could protest, she shoved me toward the back wall. I scrambled behind the crates, finding a loose panel that opened into a narrow dirt tunnel. The last thing I saw before crawling in was Elise raising her weapon toward the stairwell. Her jaw set, eyes blazing with defiance. The gunfire started seconds later. As I crawled through the darkness, dirt pressing against my palms, I could still hear her voice echoing in my head, "Everything ends there." And though I didn't yet know it, she was right. Because Hartley Tower wasn't just the end of my search. It was the beginning of everything my family had spent decades trying to bury. The morning sky over Manhattan was steel gray when I finally reached Hartley Tower, a monolith of glass and silence piercing the clouds. The building loomed like a monument to power, every reflective panel whispering the same question in my mind. What am I walking into? I hadn't slept in 2 days. The tunnel had led me to the edge of a deserted orchard, where I found an abandoned pickup truck and drove until the city skyline appeared. Elise's last words replayed in my mind. Hartley Tower, Penthouse 47. The address was scrawled on a water-stained paper she'd shoved into my hand moments before the gunfire. I didn't know if she survived. The security guard at the front desk barely looked up when I entered. I was wearing a thrift store jacket, my beard unshaven, my eyes hollow from exhaustion. But when I gave him the name Michael Thompson, something in his posture shifted. He checked his monitor, frowned, then picked up the phone. "Mr. Thompson," he said after a moment, his tone suddenly polite. "The penthouse has been expecting you." Expecting me. I followed him to a private elevator lined with black marble. As the doors closed, the air grew heavier. Floor by floor the numbers glowed red, 32, 33, 34, until they stopped at 47. When the doors opened, I stepped into another world. The penthouse was vast, an ocean of marble, steel, and silence. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline. Every surface gleamed. And in the center of the living room sat a single object, a large projector screen, already glowing faintly blue. I approached cautiously. Then, as if triggered by my presence, the screen flickered to life. My heart froze. It was him, Rudolph Hartley, my uncle, alive only in this final message, his voice deep, deliberate, and calm. He looked older than I remembered. Gray, hair combed back, sharp eyes that saw too much. "Michael," he began, "if you're watching this, then you found your way to Hartley Tower. That means the estate attorney did his job, and Detective Warren did hers." I stiffened. "She worked for him?" "Before you react, understand this. Nothing that has happened to you since your father's death was coincidence. Every step, every loss, every hardship, it was all meant to lead you here. His tone wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was proud. Your father, James, betrayed this family's legacy. He tried to destroy what we built. He believed power was corruption. I believed it was protection. When he ran, I let him go. But I always knew you'd return to finish what he couldn't. The screen showed a photo of my father, young, confident, holding me as a child. Then, images of ledgers, cash, signatures, all the evidence from the basement. The world isn't changed by honesty, Michael. It's ruled by control, and I'm giving you that control. $47 million, countless assets, and one simple condition. Take my place. My breath caught. You will oversee the Hartley Foundation. The files you found? They're leverage, insurance against those who think they can bury our name. With them, you can destroy anyone, or protect everyone. The choice is yours. He leaned closer to the camera. But if you walk away, understand this. Others will come for it. The men who killed your father still want what we had. If you don't claim this power, they will. And they won't hesitate to kill you to get it. The video ended. For a long moment, I just stood there, the silence pressing against me like weight. My reflection in the window stared back, tired, broken, but alive. Then, behind me, I heard a faint sound. The elevator dinging. Someone else was here. I turned just as the doors slid open. A man in a charcoal suit stepped out, flanked by 2 bodyguards. His slicked hair and smirk were painfully familiar. "Michael," he said smoothly, adjusting his cufflinks. "It's been a long time." It was Clayton Pierce, Veronica's new husband. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice low. He smiled thinly. "Collecting what's mine. Veronica sends her regards. You didn't think she'd let you keep $47 million without a fight, did you?" My pulse quickened. Behind him, one of the guards opened a briefcase. Inside was a handgun, neatly disassembled, waiting to be assembled again. Clayton's grin widened. "You were always the naive one, Michael. You think this inheritance was a gift?" He gestured toward the darkened screen. "It's a curse, and you're just the next pawn in his game." Before I could move, the lights flickered. Then, darkness. The sound of shattering glass filled the air. Someone screamed. A gun cocked, and in that chaos, I realized something terrifying. The real trap hadn't been the inheritance. It was me. Rudolph hadn't left me money. He'd left me bait. The world was spinning when the lights came back on. One of the guards was down, glass from the shattered window glittering like frost across the marble floor. Clayton stood near the projector screen, gun in hand, breathing heavily. I could smell gunpowder and fear, the kind that burns behind your throat. My pulse hammered in my ears. I dropped behind a column the moment the first shot rang out. Whoever fired had perfect aim, too perfect. This wasn't random. This was an ambush. "Come out, Michael." Clayton's voice echoed across the penthouse, half laughing, half mad. "Your uncle set you up! Don't you get it? He wanted you dead, just like your father." His words hit like a blade. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I do," he hissed. "Veronica told me everything. Your uncle wasn't protecting you. He was testing you. And you failed." He fired again. The bullet splintered the marble inches from my hand. I ducked lower, scanning the room for anything I could use. That's when I saw the briefcase, the one Clayton had brought in. The one with the disassembled gun. But something about it was off. There was a second compartment underneath the foam lining, slightly ajar. I lunged, sliding across the slick floor as another bullet whizzed past. I flipped the latch open. Inside was a folder labeled Project Legacy, Phase 3. My stomach dropped. Inside were photographs, surveillance shots of me, sleeping in my car, eating from dumpsters, sitting outside shelters. Every move I'd made for the last 3 months. Dated, timed, cataloged. Clayton wasn't lying. "Your uncle was watching you," he said, stepping closer. His voice trembling now with rage and something else. Fear. "He recorded every second of your downfall, because he wanted to see how far you'd fall before you'd sell your soul to get back up." The truth hit me like a hammer. My uncle hadn't just left me the inheritance. He'd orchestrated my suffering. He wanted to break me, to rebuild me into his image. "Why are you here, Clayton?" I asked, standing slowly. "What do you gain from this?" He smirked, keeping the gun trained on me. "Veronica was promised half. Hartley's lawyers contacted her the same day they found you. She sent me to negotiate." He laughed bitterly. Turns out the negotiation was one-sided. Before he could finish, the elevator dinged again. This time it wasn't a threat that stepped out. It was Detective Warren. Her badge flashed in the dim light, her eyes sharp and unshaken. Behind her were two officers in tactical vests. "Drop the weapon, Mr. Pierce," she ordered, voice like steel. Clayton spun, fired, and missed. In seconds, Warren's team returned fire. The sound was deafening. When the smoke cleared, Clayton lay face down, the gun clattering away. Warren approached me, lowering her weapon. "You all right, Thompson?" I nodded, though my legs shook. "You knew about this?" She hesitated, the briefest flicker of guilt. "Not everything. Your uncle had connections deep in the bureau. He wanted someone watching the aftermath to make sure you reached the penthouse alive." My voice broke. "He ruined my life to test me," she sighed. "Or to prepare you. That video wasn't just for you. Hartley's been dead for months, but his network, his foundation, still operates. There are people who'd kill to control it." She picked up the folder from the briefcase, scanning the contents. "Project Legacy. He wasn't building a business empire, Michael. He was building successors." I stared at her. "You mean replacements?" "Exactly," she said quietly. "He was looking for someone to take over where he left off, to continue his version of justice." I turned toward the window, the city sprawling endlessly below. The same city that had taken everything from me, and now, somehow, wanted to hand me the world. "What happens now?" I asked. Warren studied me, her expression unreadable. "That depends on you. You can walk away, take the money, disappear. Or you can open that vault in the study and see what your uncle really left you." I looked toward the glass door leading to the study, the only room in the penthouse that hadn't been touched. My heartbeat slowed. Every instinct told me to run, but something deeper, something I didn't recognize, told me to open it. "I need to know," I whispered. Warren nodded once. "Then you'd better prepare yourself. Whatever's in there, it's the real inheritance." I stepped toward the door, my reflection faintly visible in the dark glass. For the first time in months, I didn't see a broken man. I saw a survivor. And behind that reflection, deep in the shadows of the study, a small red light blinked, recording everything. The test wasn't over. It was only beginning. The study door creaked open, the sound echoing through the penthouse like a whisper from another world. Dust motes floated through the dim light as I stepped inside. Everything was perfectly arranged. The mahogany desk, the leather chair, the thick carpet that muffled my footsteps. On the desk sat a single object. A small silver key, next to an envelope with my name written in my uncle's immaculate handwriting. To Michael James Thompson. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a flash drive. The note read, "If you're reading this, you've passed the first test. But what you inherit today is not money. It's truth. Insert the drive. Listen carefully. Decide who you want to be." Warren watched silently as I slid the flash drive into the old computer on the desk. The screen flickered to life, revealing my uncle's face. Rudolph Hartley looked frail, his once powerful frame diminished, but his eyes were sharp, calculating even in death. "Michael," his voice filled the room. "If you've made it here, then you've endured what I could not. Loss, betrayal, and the cruelty of the world without losing your soul. I watched you fall, not to punish you, but to see if you would rise for the right reasons." He paused, his breath ragged. "You must understand, our family's wealth was built on shadows. Corruption. Secrets buried under concrete and cash. I spent my final years dismantling the empire I built, piece by piece. But I needed someone who could finish what I started. Someone who knew what pain felt like, because only those who've lost everything can be trusted with power." The screen changed. Images appeared, files, financial records, photos of men shaking hands in dark corners. Hartley Industries wasn't just a business, it was a web. Political bribes, shell companies, weapons contracts, names I recognized, politicians, CEOs, even judges. Warren leaned in, whispering, "My God." He was exposing them. Uncle Rudolph continued, "There's a vault beneath this building. Inside is every document you'll need to destroy the empire or control it. You have 72 hours to decide. After that, the key I left you will deactivate, and everything will be transferred to the government. I trust you'll make the right choice." The video ended. The room fell silent. The computer screen went black, reflecting my stunned face. "Michael," Warren said softly, "you realize what this means? If you take this on, every one of those people will come for you. They won't just let the truth out." I nodded slowly. "And if I walk away, then everything your uncle exposed gets buried again, and the people who ruined lives for profit keep winning." I stared at the silver key. It glinted in the faint light, heavy with meaning. The choice felt impossible. Money could fix everything. My debt, my life, the years I'd lost. But this wasn't about money anymore. This was about legacy. I turned to Warren. You knew some of this, didn't you? She hesitated. Not all. But enough to know your uncle wasn't just rich. He was dangerous. He played both sides. If you take up his mission, you'll be stepping into the same fire that burned him alive. Her warning hung in the air like smoke. I picked up the key, feeling its cold metal bite into my palm. He gave me a choice. I won't waste it. We moved toward the elevator that led to the basement vault. The doors slid open, revealing a steel chamber bathed in red light. The hum of machinery vibrated through the air. The vault was massive. Rows of safety boxes, old filing cabinets, and servers blinking with data that could rewrite history. In the center stood a single pedestal, a console waiting for the key. Warren stood back. Once you turn it, there's no going back. I looked at her, at the scar near her temple, the exhaustion in her eyes. She'd seen men destroyed by truth before, but I wasn't those men. I was the one they left behind. I slid the key into the console and turned it. The vault lights flared to life, illuminating the words etched into the steel wall ahead. The price of honor is everything. A hidden door opened. Inside was another envelope, this one sealed in red wax. I opened it and read my uncle's final message. The moment you turn the key, the world began to watch you. Every move you make will be recorded, judged, and tested. You can walk away now and live as a rich man, or you can finish what I began and live as a marked one. Whatever you choose, remember, family is not blood. It's the truth we fight for. As I lowered the letter, Warren asked, "What are you going to do?" I stared at the flashing servers, at the files that held the sins of generations. My voice came out quiet but certain. I'm going to finish it. Because maybe, just maybe, the only thing worth inheriting from my uncle wasn't his money. It was his war. When the vault door sealed shut behind us, I realized my life would never return to what it once was. The servers hummed like a living creature, their lights pulsing in sync, blue, green, red, as if waiting for my command. In my hand, I still held the key that started it all. Warren stood beside me, her eyes flickering between fear and faith. "If you go through with this," she said, "you'll be hunted. You'll never sleep the same again." I looked down at the glowing monitor. One button said transfer assets. The other said reveal files to media. One would make me rich beyond imagination. The other would set the truth free and destroy the empire that had built generations of corruption. For years, I'd blamed fate for my downfall, my divorce, my failures, my homelessness. But standing there, I finally understood. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself. I pressed reveal files. The vault lights flickered, and then silence. Moments later, notifications flooded the screens. The files had gone live. Newspapers, networks, social media, all of it. Rudolph Hartley's empire was no longer a secret. Warren turned to me. "You just made enemies worth billions," I smiled faintly. "Then I did the right thing." By dawn, every major outlet in the world was broadcasting the scandal. Politicians resigned. Companies crashed. Justice, in its rawest form, had finally broken through the surface. I didn't walk away with $47 million. I walked away with something rarer: peace. As I stepped into the rising sun, I could almost hear my uncle's voice whispering in the wind. "You chose honor over wealth. That's the real inheritance."